I mean, anyone watching this, probably knows who you are already, but we're here with the amazing Eugene S. Robinson, um, musician, vocalist, frontman of Oxbow, Boonwell, numerous other projects, journalist, author, of nonfiction, and competitive and well-known martial artist. Now, first of all, man, it's your birthday, so happy birthday.
Thank you. Well, it's actually tomorrow, but I like to create a veil of confusion, so let's just say it's today.
Okay, right on. Yeah. In honor of the veil.
Uh,
Cool, man. Yeah. What restaurant are you going to tonight? Not that I know San Francisco,
it's
but
a surprise. I haven't been told, which I like. I don't like surprise parties, but I like micro surprises.
okay. Yeah. I mean, I suppose as a fighter, surprise is a bad thing for you, right?
Well, no, I had one girlfriend once throw me a surprise party, and it served to double my already high level of paranoia that people were actually able to plan stuff around me with me being completely, it takes me 5 extra minutes to get places because I'm like taking circuitous routes because I'm like I'm being followed. So it was not good for my mental state of
Right.
affairs. So,
Right.
but micro surprise, like what's in that package, that I can handle.
Yes.
So
Nice, man. How was training today?
I was it was good outside of getting knifed in the back by compatriots. Yeah, it's jujitsu has a strict kind of pecking order. So over something minor, like guy opens the door, I close the door. I go, don't open that fucking door. I want it closed. And I get overridden by a black belt. And I was like, oh man, I'm so close. There's going to be a reign of tyranny and terror when I finally get my black belt. You'll see. But the way the system works, I had to take it. I had to let them leave the door wide open, which caused me a great amount of psychological agitate.
well,
More than you want to know, I'm sure, but you asked.
well, no. I mean, I did. Hey, the black belt, brown belt. You're a brown belt at this
I'm a,
point.
I'm a yeah, I'm a two-stripe brown belt or two-stripe brown belt. Yeah.
Well, hey, I've said this aesthetically on this channel and otherwise. Hierarchy is not a bad thing. Hierarchy can be a
Mm.
beautiful thing.
Yeah,
So,
especially when my hand is on the rock. They say diplomacy is saying nice doggy till you can get your hand on the rock.
right,
So,
right.
uh,
Politics is war by any other name.
exactly.
Yeah. We may be coming back to exactly this point, but let's see. So we don't have a million hours. So, instead of the usual, rambling and umming and erring that I usually do to set it up, maybe we'll just kind of get into it even and let people trickle in. Cause yeah, we've never talked before. We don't know each other. We have a bunch of friends in common, but
Do
yeah,
we like who?
like I don't know, Tim Dahl. Jamie Stewart
Yep,
was on
yep,
this.
yep, yep, yep.
Yeah, Jamie was. I did some singing on the backing vocals on the next Shoo record.
Nice,
So Jamie,
nice.
yeah, it's a big. I love Jamie, man. That guy
Yeah,
is
yeah,
so
yeah,
fucking cool,
yeah,
man.
yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
yeah, Salmoneo is some shit, dude.
Yep,
Obviously,
yep,
I'm a
yep.
fan. Yeah. So yeah, man. I mean, yeah, it means a lot that you would come on the stream on your birthday, and but still, since we've never talked, this will probably be a little bit more interview-ish than bull session. Some of
Yeah,
these are like three
yep,
hour bull sessions, but
yep,
this I get the little prep. I got some questions.
yep.
So yeah, man. I mean, well, recently the Boonwell record came out, right, this year. It's
Yep.
fucking awesome. And you said 2023 was going to be Boonwell time, like as far as touring and stuff.
2022 is Boonwell time.
Oh, so you're touring a bunch right now?
Oh, we toured all through July. Played Supersonic in Birmingham, and then did 16 shows in 17 days, and then go back to play a Plicasome in Porto, Portugal, October 12th. I fly the 12th, get there, play the 13th, and then do like 6 more shows to round it out.
Fair.
2023 is Oxbow.
Ah, yes, you were saying right on, right on.
Mhm.
Well, I actually kind of wanted to ask you a little bit about that Brotsman record.
Yeah.
Because I'm a huge Boonwell fan, but I kind of wanted to start off with just something that's like more like a departure,
Okay. All right.
Yeah, I mean, because that's coming out. I listened to the track that's available, and was totally vibing to it. Who put that together? Was that a Moore's Jazz Fest?
Well, the
Broadcast
guy,
there?
yeah, the guy who books the Moore's Jazz Fest, whose name escapes me because I can't remember anything anymore, except for slights and insults. He said, we want you to play Moore's, but what we like to do in a tradition that we have at Moore's is putting together pairings. Taking people off of their normal kind of beaten path and try to mix things up in a compelling way. So, what do you think about this? What do you think about you on stage with Broadsman? I think our question, or we answered by way of a question. We said Casper or Peter to figure out. They said no, Casper, and I was like, okay, cool. And so we got there and rehearsed with him. We kind of talked back and forth in email, rehearsed with him, and then did the deal. Rehearsed when we got there, in physical form. And then also they said, and I got something else I'd like you to do. And he had actually put me with a musical collective from like somewhere in Africa. So, which was completely unexpected, but totally cool. It was like some cats from England, some German guys, and some people from like Africa. And I was like, cool. I had no idea that this was going to happen, but they asked me to write some stuff, and I did it. And I've actually have it on video and have not managed to watch it because I'm just not a big video guy. It's the
Yeah.
experience that matters for me. So
Did it get recorded?
it did, of course.
Like it
Of course.
could be released and stuff.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah,
maybe
yeah,
we'll see that. Maybe we'll see
yeah.
that. Yeah, Moore's is such a cool. Yeah, I know they do the pairings and stuff. I played with my old band years ago. It's like, yeah, it's a really
What
sick
what
festival.
what's your old band?
Well, it's an old band that just reunited, which is Extra Life.
Oh, okay.
It was
All right.
around like 10, 12 years ago. We like just reunited. So
And what are you playing?
I play guitar and sing and
Okay.
like
All right.
write almost all the stuff. So
Right. Right.
yeah.
That's cool.
Moore's is so sick. That was
Yep.
one of the
Yeah, that was
highlights.
really nice.
But
Yeah. And nice hotel.
oh yeah, hell yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, Europe in general, obviously, as we both know, you go over there, you're like, oh yeah, respect.
Yeah, that's true. I've had problems in Lyon, which I'm glad to mention. Yeah,
Oh, okay.
but the guy trying to get by on the slide with some squats, like, nah, bro, we're not doing squats.
I
Sorry.
hate that squat shit, man.
Yeah,
Although
yeah.
Extra Life had great, Lyon was actually like weirdly one of our best places. We play on this boat every time.
Yeah, we played on that boat before,
Oh,
but
the Sonic, yeah.
it was if it was Sonic Protest that did it, that they tried to put you in that squat.
No, what did we do? I think we crashed at someone's house.
Yeah,
It's like good enough.
yeah. Well, we ended up staying in Formula One, and then I saw the guy lambasting us online as luxury lovers, and then I said, you know what? I will spend $700 for a round trip ticket to Lyon so I can stab you in the throat with a butter knife. And the guy turned me into the Facebook authorities. He said, you can't threaten people. I go, since when? They said, well, you can't do it on our forum. And I was like, okay, all right.
Yeah. Yeah, man. Well, so like the Broadsman thing, man. I'm interested in. Well, I'm kind of interested just in your relationship to like improvised music and just is it an ongoing thing for you, and also just what it was that material, because it clearly wasn't all improvised. Like Oxbow had instrumental shit worked out. You had lyrics and text. Like, what's the improv?
I think the first thing I had done that was in that style of music was a festival called Taklos in Bern, Switzerland, and I was paired with Steamboat Switzerland. And Michael Vertmuller wrote the piece, and Fred Frith was on it, and Willie Wynant, and the woman who, John Renaud, who used to be in what is it, Kronos Quartet, and so it had a lot of like Irene Schweitzer, who I absolutely love, because usually when you hear free jazz, it's usually noisy. And I remember complaining to somebody, and I said, how come you don't have any really like kind of plangent free jazz? And they go, right there. And she started playing, and it was really pretty phenomenal. The play that I wrote, The Inimitable Sounds of Love, a threesome in 4 acts, I wrote listening solely to her music the entire time I wrote it. So I'm a big Irene Schweitzer fan. So there are elements, and of course, my vocal lines for Oxbow are I bristled at first when Dan in some interview had described them as improvised, because they're not. But because I think about them for months and months before I step up to a microphone and sing. So they've started to form themselves in my mind. But if, the strict definition of improvisation, when I go into the studio to record, I don't have a set schema. So I guess
Yeah.
technically, officially, though I've been thinking about it for months, I don't have, oh, this is the part where I go la 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 la. That's not happening. So vocally, that's been part of my purview for a long time. And so the idea was to create spaces where, and Oxbow always does this anyway. We have sections where we, what is that thing the Grateful Dead used to have? They space, I think they used to call it, where they would have pre-designed spaces where they would improvise, and we sort of have done that over the years. And it's worked out well enough so that we did. If you listen to the record Songs for the French, that was largely that whole record.
Oh, okay.
I mean, it was just never a selling point for us. So we go, oh, it's an improvised record, but nah.
Okay, yeah. That's actually one of the records I don't know as well. I've listened to it like a little bit. Yeah, man. Yeah, because that the way you describe your vocal approach with Oxbow, that totally makes sense. Like it sounds the way you describe, man, for sure. Yeah, man. Like, I mean, also your vocal style, especially with Oxbow, it's like it always has kind of reminded me of, there's a saxophonistic quality, I think, to sort of like the going, or not just saxophone, but like avant-garde jazz saxophone vibe, of like being on the edge of noise, the melodic slipping in and out, right?
Well, it's funny. I mean, my very first band was a band called Al and the X's, in which I played saxophone badly. The idea wasn't to play it well. The idea was to, use it as an extension of what was coming out of my throat. So I think we had like 5 shows before the band fell apart, but I enjoyed it quite a lot. And of course, that was all improvised. So
yeah. Well, that's I mean, so with the horn, I mean, as a singer, you're like it's like whole thing. It's like your body is the instrument. When you hear Brotzman, you're hearing Brotzman's body, the physicality of that man.
It was great. The first time I had seen Brotzman live was a tentet in Porto, Portugal, and it was this really fantastic theater, and it was great to see it. A lot of ticket holders were there. It was like just really high toned, and at the intermission, like, all of those ticket holders were gone. They were absent. They like said, I have a season ticket, but I'm not coming back for that. And it was really pretty perfect. It was great to then meet him and be on stage with him. And also the band, the African band that I participated in, took the big stage, which is where I thought we were going to go. They said, you guys can't. They have too much equipment. You got to sit up here. And it was in the round. So it was a great performance thing to actually play in the round. It was a small round stage, actually physically round stage, in the middle of the audience. So you had people on all sides of you, and it was super interesting. I mean, just from a performance aspect.
Yeah, it's ritual. Circles are very ritualistic, right? They always smack of ritual in a way.
I don't know if it means anything, but there we go. You had disappeared for a second.
Oh no, I did that on purpose. I'm doing this is very artistic. That's actually the first time I've ever hit the solo layout on the song.
Oh, okay, all right.
I might not do that again.
No, I don't care. I just want to make sure things are still working. So.
Yeah, man. All right. Yeah. So like, and when does that record come out? The Brotzman record?
October.
Oh, okay. Right.
I think pre-order starts in September.
Word. Wait, and any more performances with him or no?
I don't think so. I'm going to see him. Buñuel plays in Plicasome, the festival in Porto, on the 13th, and he's playing then as well. So I have been known to bum rush stages. So unless there's a formidable team of bouncers, if I feel so inspired, I might just burst onto the stage when he's playing. So.
All right. Well, yeah. Is he going to be amenable to that? I mean,
he and I got along really well. It was amazing. I mean, I heard about him being this kind of fantastic curmudgeon, and but he really liked me, strangely enough.
Yeah. I heard he's a hard drinker. Like he parties like really fucking hard. Like,
I don't know. I'm such a lightweight with drinking. I didn't stick around to find out. It was noteworthy because I got my ass kicked in ping pong by Ravi Coltrane, and it wasn't even like a joke, man. I was smashing him. I was 1 point away from victory, and I just started. I had this kind of fugue state where I started thinking of the articles I was going to write about beating Ravi Coltrane at ping pong, and he amazing come from behind victory. He beat me, and I was like, unfucking believable.
Maybe is that why he beat you? Maybe you got distracted by the writer's
Of course,
thing
of course.
Like this is life. This is one of those moments. This is
No.
what we live for, right?
It's classic. It was a classic choke, you know.
Yeah,
if you pay attention to any kind of sport at all, this was a classic choke. So
yeah, man. Well, yeah, you know, like part of
and I just interviewed Vernon Reed, and I happened to mention it because he knows the Coltrane, so I'm sure it'll get back to Coltrane. That 2 years later, I'm still bugged by this. So
yeah, man. Oh, yeah, I love Vernon Reed, man.
Yeah.
I haven't heard what he's up to actually though in quite a while. But
well, you should read the interview I just did with him.
Oh, okay. Oh, okay. Yeah. What for? This for your Substack? Like?
No. This is for my day job. I'm a vice president at this design agency called the Wong Duty, which is owned by Emphasis, a billion dollar human experience company. So
right on. Is that a newer gig for you? Because I thought I had all of your shit like up to date, but I can't keep up.
They hired me November of last year.
Okay.
And so when you pick up Variety and you see that Andy Capper has been made chief operating officer of this major film consortium, I was like, that's crazy. Andy Capper, that's phenomenal. That's so great. It made me so how week I've been happy. I go, what an unlikely turn of events. And a friend of mine finally looked at me and goes, like you being a vice president. I go, I guess you're right. That is kind of strange.
Now, once you get the gig, you're like live into it. You're like, this is normal now.
No, well, I mean, what's funny is they made a really big deal. I mean, I've been used to so much hiding, like Clark Kent hiding the performative side of my life and my doings, which is impossible to do.
Hard to do
with
yeah.
Google. And they were like, no, we're about authenticity here. Your whole person. We dig what you do. You don't have to hide it. I was like, cool.
Yeah, I mean, I'm surprised that I had heard you say that before, that you have to like hide different aspects. I was kind of surprised to hear that because I thought you kind of get to a certain level, people are down, they do hire the whole person. But I guess because I got fired from a job teaching music at a Catholic school because they checked out some of my music videos and stuff. So it's like, but that's when no one knows who you are,
Yeah, right? People are stupid, man. They don't the understanding. I mean, if a normal person calls in sick on Monday, they go, they're sick. If it is known that you're a musician who plays shows and you call in sick on Monday, they go, oh, he's on tour. He's probably hungover. He's drunk. He goes high. And if you've been on tour with a band at all, it's a lot of getting up early to drive a long way to go from dirty club to dirty club. So there's no like the line from Spinal Tap. There's no sex and drugs for Ian.
Right. Yeah. It's hurry up and wait for the most part.
Yeah. Especially if you've been doing it a long time, you have coping mechanisms that have nothing to do with that stupid shit that they promulgated in the 60s as to what rock and rollers are supposed to do.
The whole thing was a mistake. That entire revolution was just failed.
Well, you introduce young people, young men specifically, to unlimited amounts of money, and then strange things are going to happen. So
yes, indeed. Yeah, man. Well, I as far as topics, man, I having talked a little bit about your relationship to improvisation, and then sort of you're getting into talking about experimental music like in general. I was this was interesting to me, man, because so I was a fan of you way back, right? Or I was a fan of Oxbow and you way back, but then I kind of like fell out of touch with what you were doing for a little bit, and then kind of came back to it in my 20s. But then with the internet existing, I was able to like really get all the facets of what you're about, man. And it kind of like one of the things, like I had heard that you were from New York originally.
True.
And I'm from New York, born and raised. I'm in LA now. I moved here like 3 years ago. Not feeling it. I'm gonna move back to New York next year.
Where are you from in New York?
Upper East Side.
Okay, what high school did you go to?
I went to Dalton.
I know Dalton.
I
went to Stuyvesant. So.
Oh, right on. Okay. Yeah. And so like I had heard that you were born in New York, but I always thought of you and Oxbow as a San Francisco, like a West Coast band.
It's true.
The thing is, though, I had no idea that you were like really connected to New York hardcore until I saw you on like the New York Hardcore Chronicles, and I was like, why are they interviewing this art rock guy who rolls with, you know, like Lydia Lunch and Kathy Acker? And it's like, but then I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, wait a minute, you know, like I wasn't there. So and I'm like in my head, I always was like, okay, like, you know, Lydia Lunch and Michael Girard don't hang out with like Vinny Stigma and like Rabies and shit, right? But then I'm like, so I want to know just how different were those scenes for real? How, you know,
not at all, man. You know what was great? If you see, there's a photo that Drew Stone used for that New York Hardcore movie that he did, right? It's taken by Phil and Flash, who's Springer from SSD's brother. And it's at me at an SSD show. In that audience, there are a couple of people in the audience, and I recently posted up where I'm climbing on the shoulders of somebody in the front row. And over my left shoulder, you can see Dickie Betts, who later was the singer for the Mighty Mighty Boss Toads. And behind him, you can see Mr. Gira.
Love it, man. Love it.
You know, he was there as well. So, you know, I mean, I didn't know him back then, but this was not a strange collision. I mean, there was a weird bridge. I'm working on my memoir now, and I'm talking about starting to go to shows in '77. And the number of people I met in '77 who made it over to the hardcore years were very few. There was like Jack Rabbit, Harley, of course, who was, you know, I first saw him with the Stimulators, and he was like, what is that 10-year-old kid doing on stage? You know,
that's nuts.
Yeah. And so Harley, Claudette, Ira, there were like 4 or 5 people who made it to hardcore from the punk rock days. Otherwise, all those people were, you know, nouveau as far as I was concerned, you know.
Right.
But Lydia was, you know, the queen of the roost. She had been there the whole time. She was there in '77. Yep. And so it was not that strange that she and I would have, and plus I was obsessed with her for years. So, you know.
Who can blame you?
Yeah,
Who can blame you?
Yeah.
I know her a little bit. I don't think she likes me, but she breaks balls. But,
yeah, that's her deal.
It's an honor. I should be honored that.
Exactly.
You know, that her high heel has even touched my nutsack.
Right.
But yeah. So okay. So like, yeah. So I don't want to over determine.
But I have to tell you, one time I was actually doing and had an event at the Knitting Factory. Right. Like I was doing. I don't even remember. It was for one of my books, maybe my novel. I was doing some spoken word. I don't even remember. Maybe I was there. Something John. So I don't remember. And I stepped outside to just to get some air or something like that. And who should be walking by, because he lives on Mott Street, was Vinny Stigma. I go, oh, yo, Vinny, what's going on? He goes, Eugene, what are you doing coming out of there? You know what we call that place? We call it the Loser Factory.
This is what I'm talking about. This is what I like. You, I know, like you might have bridged worlds. Like Gerard might have been in the background of that picture, right? But yeah, like Vinny Stigma wasn't like jamming DNA, right?
Right. Well, I started laughing. I was like, well, I'm doing this show here. He's like, all right, bro, it's on you. See you later. And he just kept on keeping on. So. And I remember roadieing with for the Beastie Boys, and they had played the Knitting Factory when it was like on White Street or someplace down
Leonard, right?
Leonard, yeah. It was on Leonard, and it was a really strange. It was a strange show, because at the conclusion of the show, the guy who had put together the event ran out and said, "Hey, listen, you guys. It seems like our Marshall heads are gone. So do you think you could have accidentally mixed it up and put it in your van by accident?" And the Beastie Boys were like, "No, we don't have enough room for that, so we didn't do it." And you could see, so it was like this really tense standoff where the guy is pretty much saying, "I know you fucking took it. Give it back," you know. And they said, "We didn't take it." And the next step for him is to say, "I got to search your van, right? I can't let you." So he's got to decide, and then he's looking at everybody inside, which is like me and all these other like skinhead cats, and
yeah,
and he finally goes, "So you sure you didn't see it anywhere?" I mean, those things don't walk away. He goes, "No, we didn't see it, man." And the guy just kind of goes, "All right." and he walked off. And I remember feeling like super shitty about that. I didn't like, because as soon as we got 10 feet from the guy, everybody was laughing like, we got one over on them. And I was like, yeah, I'm not a thief. There's certain things like I will physically assault you for, fucking with me, but I'm not a thief. I didn't like that. So
being dragged into that shit,
But of course, that was a worlds colliding. I mean, from their point of view, this was like an arts organization that had money. Fuck them. But the Beastie Boys were never broke. So what are we talking about?
But they were operating in the more broke scene culturally or whatever. So no, these things are always interesting.
And it's not like I saw them steal it, right? So it could have, who knew who took it, but there was an acknowledgement that, and of course, that fucks it up for everybody because nobody can come. They're not going to have you back again, right?
I mean, same with fighting, like violent hardcore shows. Then you can't do it at the venue anymore. Et cetera. But I mean, so like this is okay. So like I was gonna say, I don't want to harp on the New York hardcore versus no wave split, but I do in my mind, like I think about violence when I think about Eugene Robinson, right? Maybe not the first thing, but it's like,
well, that's because you're a man.
Yes. Okay, we're gonna talk about masculinity too, but well, just like, all right, like when I first heard about you, right? First I heard Oxbow, right? Then so like I'm in high school. And so, people are like, you can't look on the internet. So people tell you shit. And they're like, and this is like the 90s. So they're like, this guy, like, he's like a bodybuilder and he fights the crowd, right? And so it's funny because, like, in my head, I'm like, okay, in the context of this music, that's kind of like unusual, right? But in the New York hardcore scene, beating the shit out of people is just like right? I mean, it's like way more part of how things might happen naturally. Not on stage. Not on stage. No, not so much.
Nah, I mean, it was always, my first big New York hardcore show, I'd come back with Whipping Boy and then I came back like that Christmas, right? Spending Christmas with my mom and my sisters or something. And they had, so I was routinely at, Sunday matinees or shows at CB's. And I remember I kept tripping on the floor and said, man, Hilly's got this like nail sticking out of the floor. Yeah. And then I looked down and some guy has been putting his foot out, right? To trip me specifically. It's happened 3 times in a row. And so I look at him and I do the California thing, like, I'm going to fucking kill you. I point at him. And as soon as I point at him, the mathematics, the calculus of the situation was correctly summed up by the guy you just mentioned earlier, Ray Bees, who went flying over my head like some kind of skinhead Superman and just beat the fuck out of this guy, right? He had done the guy was clearly like some rocker cat who figured out, I'm going to fuck with the black cat, not knowing that I was well in placed in this community. So, and I was being nice, giving the guy a break by saying, if you do that again, I'll kill you. Ben Ray was just like overreactive Brooklyn shit. It was like, I'm not going to wait for another time. I'm killing you now because you don't fuck with Eugene, right? Yeah. So, but I didn't see a lot, but he was not on stage that night. He was bouncing that night. So it was understandable. I mean, the first person I saw attack an audience was James Chance, right?
That really goes against what I just said. Absolutely.
Yeah, exactly.
That's
exactly.
Yeah. Was that how unusual was? I mean,
really unusual, probably. Really unusual. And then when he started getting pressed for it, of course, it started to change the nature of his audience. And then he had gotten some guy who like a likes to fight guy in the audience. And there was, I think I distinctly remember at Max's Kansas City at one point he had gotten a hurt. By some frat guy or some such thing. But I mean, this is not entertainment for me. I would really rather end the show not being physically at loggerheads with anybody, but I'm a defender of art, and and it only happens. I mean, the last place enduringly it happened was the UK, and where there's this whole thing of like, anti-classism. Okay, just because you're on stage doesn't mean you're better than us. So because you're on stage, you have to put up with a lot of abuse. I mean, if you're throwing cigarettes at me, if you're throwing ice at me, if you're throwing full bottles of beer at me, if you're grabbing and squeezing my testicles, you grossly misunderstood. You must think I'm Rollins. I am not, and I'm upset, not because you physically trespassed against me, but I'm upset because you're interfering with the show. If you don't like the art, I'll give you a refund 100% of the time. If you're unhappy with the artistic merits of this performance, you will get paid back, and you can go home and say it sucked. I got my money back. But if
Yeah.
you want to stop the show, in other words, interfere with the process of creation, then you deserve every terrible thing that happens to you.
Yeah, I mean that this makes sense cuz right, like no one the legend was never like, "Oh, Eugene Robinson bullies people in the audience." It was always more like people fuck with him and that's part of the thing.
Yeah,
People try to fight him. Like that was sort of
yeah,
the legend
yeah.
or
I
something,
think I think that happened until people realized and started getting really hurt, and that I'm actually
Yeah.
not messing around. So
Yep. Yeah, yeah.
I mean, ultimately at this point, I've now decided that I'm better suited. I mean, I'm training jujitsu 7 days a week. It's not interesting for me to fight people who don't know how to fight. And if you
Yeah.
do know how to fight, then we have better forms to do that in. But my recent take is much more like Nina Simone, where she told the audience member who was coughing, "You think this shit is easy? It's not. Hey, you try it." And she left. I
Yeah.
get paid. I get paid no matter what. So if you and the audience are collectively deciding that what you would rather do is not hear me, I can get back to the hotel and to masturbation as quickly as humanly possible. I don't need to
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I don't need to stick around here with you guys. So
Yeah. No, totally, man. I kind of thinking about violence though. It's like there's actual violence, and then there's like artistically just what people are dealing with. And I mean,
Mhm.
so much of like the people you worked with in the 80s. I mean, if we're like Lydia Lunch and Kathy Acker, I mean, and then other people in that sort of general axis of art in New York in particular. I mean, it seemed like violence was like a big part of like the subject matter, right?
Well, but New York in the 70s was a very different place. I mean, if you factor in everybody getting back from Vietnam, I mean, if it's I had my kids watch some of these movies. My kids who have actually been to New York now, and it's like, don't
Yeah.
you have to start with Panic in Needle Park with Al Pacino
Yep.
and end up with Taxi Driver, and to look like, no, these weren't scene sets.
Yep.
This is kind of really the way things were, and it's permanently marked a lot of us. I still don't do stuff like put a key in a lock to my house without first
Yeah.
doing a shoulder check. I mean, it was a weird time.
Yeah. I basically missed that, especially on in Uptown Manhattan. But early '90s, there was
Well,
still
how old are you?
42. So I
Yeah,
mean,
okay, yeah.
yeah. So I missed the real shit. Walking
Yeah.
around, first time walking around the city, 11, 12. There was definitely, definitely
Yeah.
got robbed a bunch and people
Yeah.
swinging at me and shit. But yeah,
Yeah.
pre Giuliani.
Yeah.
But yeah, man. I mean, another thing that I kind of like. I'm interested in like your philosophy, man, on fighting, because I watched so many interviews with you. I mean, I already had before, but then kind of like, especially prepping for this and like really seeing what you had talked about, like fighting wise, like you were saying like that in one of these things you were like fighting is it's philosophical for you,
Yep.
but then there's also that you also just enjoy chaos, and
Yep.
that you kind of put those two together. And then I also, man, I was like, I saw you were talking about Rene Girard.
Yep.
And that to me, like, I haven't checked him out, but I just recently have been like, before hearing that, I was like, I gotta check out Rene Girard, and I have been watching some little micro lectures
Yep.
on YouTube about it.
Yep.
I think people are really. I think he's really coming back up now, like with the sort of the mimetic desire thing,
Yep.
like with regards to the internet and sort of culture war, politics shit. Yeah, I mean, without like, putting you on the spot, I mean, I'd be really interested to hear on what you were talking about with how fighting for you relates to his ideas of like sacrificial violence. Like that
Yeah.
was like, I was like, okay, this I want to know about.
Well, he talked about the sacrificial. We interviewed him in Birth of Tragedy magazine, which I used to publish, and which resulted in one of the first spoken word documents that wasn't John Journo's or Harvey Kubernik's. And we put out, it's called Fear, Power, God, a spoken word graven image compilation, which I think is Black House Records reissued it, and they're from kind of Idaho, interestingly enough. And so you can still buy the CD now. The vinyl was great because it was white vinyl, but we didn't put Girard on it. But yeah, the whole idea of us being in a sacrificial crisis, you can see it in politics. You can see that after, despite 8 years of comfortable progress embraced, say, under Clinton, which in the aftermath it wasn't that comfortable for that many people, but it was comfortable to a certain degree that people were kind of willed. I mean, yeah, and there was real Supreme Court chicanery, but kind of willed George W. Bush on America, and we had 8 years of this kind of chaotic involvement with the towers, and then the Gulf, and then Afghanistan, and it just we got. Then we had these kind of relatively eventless 8 years of Obama, and then we just kind of willed this, somebody who was clearly going to do and exactly what he did, and that was not going to be any different. Then there were no surprises in regards to our former city mate, Mr. Trump.
Yeah.
So we have, periodically had these bloodlettings in order to expiate the sins of a community, or I like just it's a pressure release thing. If I can, a friend of mine once described this guy I actually knew, it was in the mafia, once explained to me about his relationship with his girlfriend, and he got really down to brass tacks, and he goes, we only have anal sex during very specific times. I go, what are you talking about? He goes, when she's really stressed. That this is something that she requires me to do when she is really stressed.
It's an act of sacrifice. It's a ritual act of
It is something that takes you out of yourself in a degree that you need to gain some sort of perspective. So Girard's thing, I don't think we're through. I think we're in a cycle of it, and I absolutely do not believe we're through. We have not normalized any of our experiences, so things are still very much in flux. And while I enjoy that on an interpersonal level, I don't enjoy it on a macro level, but I understand it's the way things work, and I'm willing to embrace it. In fact, as I'm writing this memoir, I'm talking about going to a show with my mother at what used to be called the Ritz, which is now Webster Hall, and me getting into a fist fight with three bouncers, and eventually being overcome, and they're about to toss me down these marble stairs, and I say, hey, wait, there's my mom. And they look, and they actually let me go, right, in a weird turn. Like, they actually, because my mother looks really young, she looks like my sister, so but she looks enough like me, and they let me go. And she talked about it later. She said, there was this weird light around you, and you were smiling, and it was a face I'd never seen before. And it, it's like, I hate you and I'm glad to see you. Like, this is simultaneously the best and the worst moment of my life right now, because it is, as far as I can see, we are engaged in moments of complete and total honesty. There is no you can't. There was no confusing a punch in the face. It is exactly precisely what it is, right? So, and usually when you have the limitations of philosophy, usually it ends up there. For the first few years of my fight life, I didn't understand what was happening. I'd be jawing at somebody, and they'd be jawing back, and then they would walk up to me. It never dawned on me that they were going to strike me. It took me about 3 years of getting struck before I realized, oh, he's not coming back to continue the argument.
Right.
He's coming back because he's uncomfortable with the argument, right? So I learned how to kind of fight just so I could finish the argument. Like, I'm glad to switch paths with you, but I think I'm right, and I'd rather talk this out. But if you'd like to go the other way, I hate you and I'm glad to see you, but this is definitely and conclusively part of a cycle. And that's kind of what Girard was talking about in the interview that he did with us. So,
okay. Yeah. I mean, is the idea kind of like, when you're talking about sort of you're talking about electing Trump as sort of an act of sacrifice, is that kind of, but that, like, it's not working as sacrifice, like it's not functioning properly?
A friend of mine who is, a big brain guy. I mean, billion-dollar, venture capital investment in this company. And last I heard, he was living in a van in Costa Rica and let it all go. And he said to me at one point, he said, Eugene, have you ever walked by that big red button and wondered what would happen if you pushed it? And I said, actually, I'm an inveterate button pusher, but not that big red button.
Okay, right. All right.
And so that's, I think Trump was very much part of the big red button. I don't know that I would describe our involvement with him as having anything to do. The people who support him, of which I have friends who are big Trump supporters,
Yep,
they
me
they
too.
don't view it as a sacrifice. They are, in my mind, the world is divided into cynical opportunists and true believers, and they are true believers. There's nothing cynical about their belief in the
Mm,
man. So they, what is it? Aristotle or Mary Wollstonecraft once said about no person consciously does evil. They they
yes.
they they they're not viewing themselves as being part or parcel of any kind of sacrificial involvement. But I feel that we're working up to it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, that reminds yeah, no one thinks they're doing evil. I mean that the little bit that I listened to people talking about Girard, they were talking about like there are no antagonists like in a fight because the whole thing is that you're on the defensive.
Right.
Like you just like both parties believe that they're on the defensive and
Well,
then
right in
yeah.
the God issue of the magazine, because each issue was themed. I think I got Anton LaVey from the Church of Satan and interviewed him, and I was pursuing this idea of evil, shorn of moral shadings, but this idea of do you know what we're talking about? Because I felt it move within me, and he said, "Well, what's evil is what doesn't feel good." Well, toothache
That's
doesn't feel good. The stomach ache
yeah,
doesn't feel
that's
good. It's not evil.
facile. Yeah, I think
Well,
that's
yeah. But
facile.
then he eventually said I kept probing and then coming back to it, and finally he said, "Hey, man, because I'm an atheist. I'm I'm just trying to make the rent." And I go, "Oh, okay. I completely understand. Good luck to you. That's fine." But he didn't have any understanding of what it was specifically that I was talking about. So that's cool. I mean, this is what I was looking for. I was looking for a direct experiential. And as I got into when I interviewed Manson and so on, I understood that finally I came down on the side of evil as being a, a consciousness and a delight in cruelty.
Okay, yeah, sadism is yeah, okay, okay.
Right?
I mean that's how I would tend to intuitively define it,
Yeah.
but I again to for me to really try to preach that, it still ends up being a essentially religious argument. I mean,
Okay. Well, let's just go straight to it. Let's take somebody like Hitler,
right.
right? And he did much like Roosevelt and some of these other guys. He did some version of, I forget what it was called, fireside chats. And in the fireside chats, and I think this was pointed out by Browning, the guy who wrote Hitler's Willing Executioners, and he said that they're talking about resettlements, and he said Hitler made a joke about extirpation and resettling people in the East. And he intuits that at the point where Hitler was saying this, that he clearly knew that that wasn't happening, and he's laughing and joking about the resettlements, knowing that people were being sent to camps
Yeah.
and incinerated. And he go his delight in that. For Browning came very close to this is like qualifies evil, right? This
Right,
was
right.
obvious delight in cruelty, and forget about this thing about the bacillus of the Jewish race. I mean, he knew Jews were people. It just
This is interesting. Okay, yeah, yeah.
yeah. So
Right, right. Yeah, like you can't right. I mean, the Nazis probably at the time they would have been like this is a necessary, it's a dirty job, but someone's got to do it. We wish they would just leave without us killing them with that,
well,
the
you have a lot.
extirpation.
You
But
have a lot of those cats who were clearly like true believers, but
yeah.
it's a cynical opportunist in their ranks that I think come closest to embodying evil, and I can say that comfortably without any moral shading because the delight in cruelty. It wasn't, you could kill a rat. Or you could make a ceremony of it, right? Like when they were doing these performative things, like having people clean the sidewalks with their toothbrush. That's not. That's
Right.
something else, man.
Right,
Something
right,
else is
right.
happening there. So
Wouldn't you say though that like on some level like viewing like just straight up cruelty like that, knowing cruelty as pure evil, isn't that kind of like an aesthetic judgment ultimately? Like it's disgusting, you know? Because that's how I feel. Like it's a disgusting thing.
Yeah, I mean, there's been some pushback on Hannah Arendt when she's talking about the Eichmann trials, and I think too with Nazis you got to be careful with the use of the word aesthetic because there's so much of that in connection with the Nazis that I mean
I mean viewing cruelty as ugly. You know, obviously their
yeah.
uniforms were hot. That's not that's not
But
what I
no,
mean.
but this is like Stevens, the Supreme Court justice in this definition of pornography. I mean, I think we know when we've gotten there, right? And it's usually
Yeah.
goes back to Girard. It's usually a collective process, right?
The contagion, yeah.
Like a friend, I've written about this before. You can find it on Stomping Out Rape. Literally, a guy had tried to rape a friend of mine, and we found him and we beat him to within an inch of his life. The only reason we actually stopped beating him was because it was on the Lower East Side, and some drug dealers didn't want their spot hot, and they're like, "Get that shit, take it away," you know, and
Wow.
pulled guns on us, so we had to stop. But
Jesus Christ.
second time we found the guy, we told him, look, he had some business to tie up. We said, we never want to see you again. If we see you again, we're gonna, you know, you're gonna get worse. But we saw the guy as he was escaping from the Lower East Side, and he was set upon by a group of people I was with. And there was a point at which they were all looking for collective reads to figure out where, like Escaladio, how far are we gonna let this go?
Yeah.
And at that point, I realized that I remember sitting down. I stopped beating the guy and I went and sat down in a parked car and just watched. Um, because I was not, we're not going to have a day of the locust moment on the Lower East Side. I mean, it was clear to me that the guy was leaving. You know, did I need to murder him on 4th Street? I don't think so. But I was more interested in what people were going to do. And ultimately, they let him flee. I mean, the group lost its head, right? I mean, me and one of the other guys who had been primary beaters the first time just sat on the car. I made no move to stop it, you know,
Yeah.
but I made no move to advance it either. So,
Yeah.
and you could feel that was that moment at which do you cross a line which bespeaks of a delight in cruelty? Because that's all it was at that point. I mean, he knew he had to go. He was going. He had tried to, you know, rape this woman, had been corrected, and was going to take his field of operations elsewhere. But what was going on second time felt perverse to
Yeah,
me.
yeah. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, yeah.
So, and I think perversion is where we get delight in cruelty because it's not. I'm going to use an uncomfortable word. It's not natural to delight in cruelty.
Yeah, I have thought that. I'm not sure if that's
You
totally true, but it
you
makes
spend time
sense to me.
spend time around a lot of kids. They don't, you know, kids are not wired that they are moralless sometimes. Like I remember finding some rats at the house and saying, well, we have to kill these rats because we don't, if we were in their house they would kill us, so we have to kill them. And but I don't want to make them suffer, so let's drown them. So me and the kids, we went to a bucket and we drowned these you know, these rats or mice or whatever it was. And but there was no, you know, there's a feedback where the kids are looking at me and I'm looking at them and we're talking about what's happening, and there was no delight.
Yeah.
Right? There was
Yeah,
no
yeah.
delight. So you know, if I had brought emotion to it, like, yeah, let's get these fucking rats, I think my kids would have been appalled and confused.
Right on. Yeah, yeah. Yeah. You know, as far as philosophies of combat that are not really dealing with like morality as such, are you a Mishima fan? Because I'm like, he's someone I've never heard you talk about, but when I think of a philosopher who has a philosophy
Hmm.
of violence and combat, reading like Sun and Steel recently and him
Yeah,
talking about the opponent,
yeah.
I've been
The,
thinking about you. Yeah.
there's a through line from him, like, and Jocko Willenick and Henry Rollins and Joe Rogan and Iron John and to a certain degree, I just think he's the Far East variant of that kind of, you know, cult of strength school.
Yeah.
And there's no mistake that it's usually always mixed up in a certain amount of sexual confusion. So if I'm going to go down that road, I prefer somebody like Genêt, who was like,
Yes. Oh yeah.
who's like embracing criminality for the sake of criminality, and was already solid in his identification as a homosexual man. I was like, yeah, whatever. This is how I'm rolling, so deal with it. But also, I find that stuff also weirdly performative. I mean, I like that Mishima was like a weightlifter and all that kind of stuff, but it was, I didn't start lifting weights to be whole psychically or psychologically. I started lifting weights to develop a carapace that allowed me to advance a philosophical argument without getting my head beaten in by
Okay.
people who would oppose this argument, right? So, but yeah, in that case, you're right, right? I guess primarily it was defensive, but I have somebody had gifted me one of the Mishima books here, which I have right here. But and I read it and enjoyed it, but I'm not a super.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, despite all my kind of macho kind of touchstones, I got 4 sisters, I got 4 daughters, I got tons of female cousins and aunts. And they're like, there's a man born in my family like once every 50 years. Right? There's a me and now my grandson. Right? So I spent a lot of time with women. I think my macho ideation stuff is more about kind of protecting that. And the times when I've like flipped out, like with this guy who tried to rape my friend, it was like I sort of flipped out at someone else's behest, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like kind of like the character Bud from Elroy's L.A. Confidential,
Yeah, 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 yeah.
So
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's funny, macho. Like, I actually don't think of the word macho with you because you don't
yeah,
speak in a macho, like the general vibe
yeah,
on a hang level is not a macho vibe.
yeah,
I'm, I love what you said about Mishima versus Genêt though, because it makes me think of like Genêt is erotic, so is Mishima, but it's also neurotic in a
correct,
sense.
correct. Yeah,
The
one was okay with how he was, and one wasn't okay with how he was. So
yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah, I mean Mishima is a big he's such a big touchstone for like the right wing bodybuilder kind of movement.
yeah.
Like yeah.
Besides
Uh
which, I don't think there was nearly the same social sanction for homosexuality in Japan as there was in the West, but I could be wrong about that.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, I gotta revisit Genêt. I mean, that's like, like a big
Yep.
yeah, a big thing.
He came to one of my friends who just died, history professor at Stanford, Mark Manical, had Genêt come through like a few years before I got to Stanford. And he didn't think much of him. But I think it's also because he stole shit from him. But I was like, you should be honored. Yeah, no. You have Genêt stay at your house and then like your
Yeah.
shit's missing. It's like, come on, man. That's like getting an autograph, right?
Yes, yes, that's the criminal, the autograph of a true criminal artist,
Right,
is
right,
to
right.
get your shit
Yeah,
taken.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, so talking about morality and stuff. I'm also okay. So on this show and on my channel, right? It's like I try to avoid politics, capital P,
Hmm.
but it's unavoidable, especially now. Some kind of meta politics, parapolitics type stuff.
Right.
And I'm always interested in just, at least on like a culture, I don't know, culture war is kind of the cringe term, but just people who are like from your generation and people who I just like look up to from the slightly older generation is like I see people going down these different paths, man, and like you seem to have been like holding this similar vibe, but maybe not,
Right.
But I see people like I see Steve Albini being like that was fucked up,
Yep.
like he's then you see someone like Jim Goad being like that wasn't fucked up, actually double down, right?
Hmm.
And I mean, your stuff is
And,
never really.
and both are friends of mine.
Yeah, 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 yeah. No, I know they're both cool. I mean, yeah,
Yeah.
much respect to both.
Mm.
I kind of, but see, that's almost exactly the point. They're both friends of yours, and I've just when I've read like interviews, you know, with asking about I don't know, asking about like tattoos with the swastika and the Star of David. It's like in my head, something like that.
Mm.
I still think that's just as cool as I thought it was back in the day. But there's a
Mm-hmm.
lot of people that would be like, "Oh no, like that's not cool now." Like,
Well,
has your
yeah.
attitudes about that kind of cultural slash political shit, has it changed at all, or is it just more the world's changed and you're just like, I know
Mm,
where I'm at?
no, I've been pretty. There's something. It's funny you should mention that. As the timing goes, like I'm on Twitter, and one of the fighters who I'm friends with, this guy named Jake Shields, has kind of gone off the deep end on Twitter with with this anti-trans thing, and he grew up in Ukiah. He came from a old hippies, weed family, lifelong vegetarian. So all the bona fides of somebody who would be politically progressive, but is into Milos Yiannopoulos, whoever that guy is
Mm-hmm.
like a lot of fighters has kind of adopted this. So some guy says, "Hey," figures out that we're connected, at least socially. I've written pieces on him before for like Vice or something, and he's like, "Hey," and he's asking me to repudiate him publicly. Right? This is like denied 3 times before the cock crows, and I go, who needs who in the public marketplace at this point in time needs me to repudiate Jake Shields?
Yeah.
Is this
Well,
is it, are people dying to know what Eugene Robinson thinks? Are people unclear about what Eugene Robinson might think about Jake Shields' politics? Because I talk about it every week on the show Stomper, so it should be pretty clear to anybody who's passing. So your performative desire to have me sanction a guy who I maintain social contacts with is ridiculous to me,
well,
right?
I think I hate it too. I hate that. It's
So
a yeah.
I told the guy, I said, listen, I think you're an asshole, but you're still here on I have it, it is truly a big tent. You and I don't have to agree on anything, or like I had a friend from Soviet Georgia who would say, and he was part of the wave of Soviet Jewry that left, the Soviet Union before the collapse. And he was like, Eugene, people can say anything they want to me. I draw the line when you put your hands on me. And he's like a judo black belt, formidable guy. So put your hands on me, I got to kill you. But before that, you can say anything you want to me. And I've maintained, like, people like, how will you maintain this association with Gavin McInnes? And it's, well,
Yeah.
first of all, I've not been invited to dinner at these people's houses. Uh, but your ideas diverge from mine, and what?
Well,
And what?
that's what's getting kind of lost. I mean, I think there's a real logic of contagion with that kind of thing, almost in the Girardian way.
Yeah.
With the scapegoating and the group stuff, but this moral contagion of like, if you associate with someone, then you must agree with all of their
Well,
ideas.
well, and
To
somebody,
clarify.
yeah, somebody in my defense said, "Look, like 4,800 people here who follow Eugene. It doesn't mean he's finding common cause with any of them." Which is the point I made, but just nicer. Like, you're an asshole, but you're still here. So what? I'm not sanctioning your behavior. So what do you give a shit what I do with the rest of my time? But I've been consistently the same kind of cat. The whole, if you do a diagram of me and my, it's been pretty much like that. Like when I came to California, I swore to God I would never get in a hot tub or go to an orgy. I get to California now, I go to hot tubs and I've been to orgies. So whatever. You start to make do. But I remember at one point I was telling a story. It was just right after getting to California from New York, and I spent most of my time at this like gym out in Ridgewood, Queens. With all these working class cats,
Yeah.
and so I'm telling this story, and I'm like, so anyway, this chick says that she was, and one woman in the group who was listening to this story goes, chick, and I knew what point she was trying to make. I looked at her and I registered. I understand. You believe this is retrograde. And I go,
Right.
yeah. So anyway, this chick, and I finished the story.
Right.
Yeah.
You're like, this
And
is how normal people talk. Right?
not even
Yeah,
normal people, not even more, but you're missing the point of the story. I understand if my story is not entertaining enough for you to be able to skate on by my use of the word chick. And she later, somebody said to describe Eugene, she goes, he's so, and it wasn't necessarily a put down. She was trying to correctly define it. He's so pseudo macho. And I was like, I'm going to get a business card that says that.
That's good. Yeah, put that on the card.
I can
Yeah.
actually live with that. I can
Yeah.
live with
No,
that.
that's sick, man. Yeah.
Yeah.
I just with some of that stuff, what I often think about is that, like, when I was thinking about like like a swastika and a Star of David together, like, we're talking about like opinions and ideas, right? How you're like, well, I can like disagree with something Jim Goad says, but we can still be bros in this other way. I think now one of the things that is crazy about the so-called political thing now is that it becomes not about ideas or opinions.
Hold on a second, will you?
Sure.
My house is falling apart. Go ahead.
Is it? I was just, I mean, let me know if you got a jet, of course, but I mean, I was gonna say, when coming back to like combat and just like the opponent, to put it in like a Mishima term, it's kind of like, or Carl Schmitt, like friend enemy distinction. Like I see so much of like what's politics now not being debates about ideas, but being like war between tribes, or like, you know, like it becomes more about like he's not like the person isn't saying you got to repudiate that guy's opinions. They're saying you have to disavow the guy because he's your opponent. Like they're basically asking for combat in a sense, right? I mean, or is that a stretch? I don't know.
No, they are, but you know, this is like I talk about in the Showstopper. It's like you guys got to peek around that fucking curtain. You know, you're all being aggressively played, as played as you ever were, and more. You know, and I don't know if you've ever been in the middle of a riot. And I remember I was in the middle of a riot, San Jose, of 1985 or 86. Whipping Boy had just played a show with the Adolescents were headlining. We were playing, and we had finished playing, and something happened, and the place exploded. And kids were tearing out chairs, flipping out, setting fires in the arena, punching cops in the face, and it was just this, it was chaos. And I remember after the band had said, well, we're going to load our gear out. And I said, well, I'm parked across the street. For some reason, I thought I'm just going to walk through to the front and leave, right? And my motorcycle was parked in the front. And so I'm walking through this crowd, and I felt like Dante, you know, and Virgil, because I didn't like the cops didn't think like all these like kids with mohawks and leather jackets who they were getting punched by or they were beating. I didn't seem to be one of those. You know, I'm a full-on bodybuilder at this point, so I was like, but I didn't seem to be working there, and the kids knew that because I just played who I was. So I just kind of peacefully moved this crowd, this mad chaos of people being bludgeoned and nightsticked and maced, untouched and undisturbed, and just kind of watching. And largely, I feel that's where I am right now with America. I mean, except now that I've got people who I care about and don't want to get hurt, you know, my kids. So I'm actually not just talking about it, not just I'm leaving America. To quote Jamie Stewart, who said it best, he goes, I'm staying ahead of disaster this time. I'm building a house in Spain. And on conclusion of the construction, I will be selling the house I'm sitting in now and moving to Spain. I'm done. I'm done.
He told me a couple weeks ago he's moving to Berlin. Is he actually doing Spain now?
Well, no, I am moving to Spain.
Oh, you are? Okay, right.
I am. At the time he and I talked, he was thinking Spain or Australia, and I go, Australia's a mistake, man.
That's bizarre. Yeah, that's a weird move.
I really went through my Berlin thing, and I decided against it. You know, and you know, strangely enough, on this Buñuel tour, I met a lot of guys. 4 or 5 from the Lower East Side. Like, what are you doing here? Guys, I can't get old in America. Right.
That's that line. I'm probably not going to leave here, but I'm going to think of that line will stick with me and probably.
Well, you just think about it. You have to maintain a straight world job to have health insurance, right?
Yes.
Even with Obamacare, I had Obamacare for 6 months after I left Ozzy before I started this VP gig. And that was not an easy get, and still had to be paid for. And then I know a guy, because I'm all over this VC community, who's friends with the guy who started GoFundMe. And he goes, you understand that 28% of my business is medical GoFundMe? I am part of the healthcare puzzle in America.
That's so nuts. It's so fucking nuts.
Yeah. So these guys are like, all I have to do to live in Italy is learn Italian, and I could get taken care of, you know. So they've just all left. So Jamie and Angela are you know, they're making the right move. When are we going? He wants to. I just have to give him an answer. How long should I keep? Is Paige here? Okay.
I think we may be at a natural cadence, right?
Can you 15 minutes? Can you give me? Okay. So all right, cool.
Oh, okay. So like another 15 or something.
Yeah.
All right. Nice, man. All right. Let's see.
So
Well,
yeah,
okay.
so Berlin, that work. You tour and you fall in love with different cities at different times, and but I'm reading State Department reports and I'm reading sit rep the documents, and I've made a determination that if Spain escaped from World War I, World War II, Vietnam, Korea, relatively unscathed with the exception of Franco. Uh, um, I think I'm probably, for the remainder of my time on Earth, I think I could probably hang there quite comfortably.
Okay, right on. You're gonna build too. It's and so the fam is gonna move like everyone's
The,
moving. Or, yeah.
the house is big enough to be able to fit everybody. And my older kids were sort of irked at first because they felt like you're leaving. And I go, is it your intention to live the entirety of your life here in California? And so they've all been traveling a lot lately, and they've all fallen in love with different cities that are outside of America. And I was like, okay, so now you understand. Now we're part of the way there, to you
Yeah, yeah.
understanding what the hell I'm doing, and coming and putting your stuff in the room that I have for you in the house. So
Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
I fall in love with whatever city the gig is good in. And so I end up
Exactly.
falling in love with like weird cities that, like
Yeah,
just
but then
wouldn't like
you wise up. You got to go back at different times, and then you
yeah.
just have to. You're enough so that you become a citizen of the universe, where you start seeing the eyes like a local. Like, okay, like, where do I get my groceries? Where do I get my shit washed? But then okay, there's a traffic jam here, and this is that's that. I mean, Berlin had in my mind for a long time, and then I went back in like January. I was like, bro, no, I did this in New York. I'm not doing this again.
Yeah, it's too
You know,
similar. Yeah,
the
yeah.
cold, the
Yeah.
cold. I'm not doing that. So
Yeah, yeah. Well, yeah, we'll see, man. I'm
California's made me soft.
dude, I'm so not into it, man. I feel
Yeah.
like a dick, it's like no one
Oh,
forced me to move here.
see,
But
that's the thing. Yeah, we are. I've been here since 1980, and I still have not made my peace with California.
dude, it's bizarre. I mean, the thing is, I feel corny even complaining because my problems with it are just exactly what you would think a New Yorker's problems
Right?
are. Like
Yep.
it's like boring. It's like the
Yep.
pizza sucks. You can't go to the corner store. You got to drive. It's just like I don't even have an
But
original take
but
on it.
you,
I just want to
but
get the
you
fuck back.
but you haven't touched on the number one thing that we say when we talk to each other when we're alone, which is the fucking people.
Yeah, dude, it's literally IQ, man. It's
Yeah,
not cool. I
yeah,
mean, well,
yeah,
also boundaries. Here's my,
yeah.
I've been saying this to everyone. This is what pisses me off. Okay,
Uh,
you
uh,
go, you go to like, okay, coffee, right? You're getting like barista or whatever. It's like, how you doing? I'm like, good. So that's normal, right? We have that
right,
in New York.
right.
Then there's like, how's your day going? That's pushing it, right? We have that in New York also. How's your day going? Then what did you do today?
Yeah.
That's where it's like you don't know me like that, man. You
That's
don't know me like
right.
that. That encapsulates it for me. I'm like,
Yeah.
you're being nice, but it's actually an aggressive act to me when you start trying to extract information from me and
Right,
shit.
right, right. No, I don't. Well, I had a Karen moment yesterday with somebody. I'm going to the post office, and there's some women on the sidewalk I'm not really paying attention to, and there's some little kid, but I'm assuming is there with the women, right? And as I'm driving in, some woman is glaring at me on the other side of the street in a completely unrelated way. I don't know. So the kid is standing in his parking spot, so I like start moving my car in, and the kid, like runs off to be what I assume with these other women. So I park, I lock the door, I get out, and as I'm walking to the post office, I see the glowering woman walking on my left with the kid. And she goes, so I guess we're going to run over kids now. And I go, she says it, she's talking straight ahead, not cleverly, not looking at me. Right.
Right, right.
And then as I take a few more steps, I go, oh shit, the kid was saving a spot. And that's why she was glowering, because she was going to know the kid made no move or didn't articulate what was happening. I thought she was just a kid standing there.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
And so, and the New Yorker in me was like, you talking? You talking
Right.
to? You got something to say to me? Because you should look at me when you're fucking talking to me.
Exactly.
And then this was like, now I got this nice space, California space. Like, hey, she's not talking to me. But of course,
Yeah.
as I go to the post office to get my shit, and I run back to the car because I got, then she's gonna smash the window and key my car, so I got to get to the car back. So,
Maybe, yeah, but it's
yeah.
right. I mean, yeah. Also, what a parking space means to a New Yorker
But
is
you
not something.
exactly
It's not something
get
that
that
people really
fucking
understand.
get that kid out of the way. You're not
But I keep
getting. Yeah.
But it's like that's the thing. Passive aggressiveness guess. The
Yeah.
kid is passive aggressively guarding the space.
Yeah.
She's passive aggressively pissing,
Yeah.
like talking
Yep.
shit. Even the winter here is passive aggressive. It's just like, yeah,
That's right. Right.
I'm just
Yeah,
like,
that's the thing. I prefer aggressive. So
no.
yeah.
But yeah, I mean, back in New York, but you don't miss New York though that much. I mean, you kind of you.
It's well, I finally had an awakening and awareness that the city that I missed, and this is about 10 or 15 years ago. And my mom still lives there, and both one of my sisters lives in Istanbul, but she has still sublets her apartment in New York, and I just realized the city, it doesn't exist.
Yeah.
I mean, it would, if I moved back, and I've thought about rebuying the house I grew up in, because it was on the market for a bit, and I was like, yeah, man, I don't want to live Flatbush. What am I thinking? I'm gonna get on the subway 40 minutes to the gym like I used to. Nah, California has ruined me to a certain degree, but then New York has ruined itself. It's not the same city. So
it's not. I mean, I have heard though the past 4 or 5 or whatever 3 years since COVID. I mean, it has changed a little bit. I mean, it's not Taxi Driver again, but
yeah.
I mean, I don't know. My friend had a gash on his head. He posted on Twitter. I'm like, I haven't seen that in a while. I mean,
Well, Chris Rock kind of set me straight during I interviewed him, and he was saying, he goes, yeah, man, it's a teenager in you that misses it. The adult male in you doesn't miss it. I was like, yeah, maybe you're right about that. And that interview I did with him was like in 2000. So maybe that was right around the time I started thinking, he might be right.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. Just like all my friends are there. It's just it's hard for me to like tear myself out of there.
Yeah.
But cool, man. Maybe we're good. I mean, we could actually take, I don't know if you've been looking at the questions on the side. I haven't really been.
Oh shit! I didn't even know there were questions on the side.
Well, there's a whole chat. I usually don't.
Oh, I see the chat thing here. Okay.
I mean, it's more comments and shit, than and it's not a ton, but
Well, see, when I look at the chat, I can't see you, so I like to. There's a friend of mine. It's a friend of mine. The same guy who was in the mafia. At one point, some guy who owed him money, and the guy goes, I don't know what you think. He goes, I'll tell you what I know. And the guy kind of stops. He goes, I know you. The guy paid. He knew exactly what he meant. So I like to see your face. So
yes.
I wouldn't be in the chats anyway. What did he say?
Right. They're actually not. They're actually not asking questions. They're just saying. They're just agreeing with you.
Okay.
They're just a bunch of yes men. No, they're like, yeah.
I forgot this was live. So,
yeah. That's the whole thing. I mean, but most people watch it in replay. I mean, because it lives on my site.
What I try to do with some of these things to make them brand differentiate is like I do this with my readings. When I do the book readings, I usually have a section at the end. Provided you can manage to put your phones down for 5 fucking seconds and not record it, I will answer any question you give to me as truthfully as I can. Of course, if you listen to the words, as I can is a qualifier, but generally I pride. I don't like dissembling very much, and I'll give it straight to you. I see lying as a product of fear or vouchsafing gain, which I don't need to do.
It just abrades your soul, just like dishonesty. It just takes some shit.
Well, there's a circumstance in which it makes sense. A guy comes running around the corner with a gun and said, "Did you?" Oh no, that wasn't me.
Yeah, exactly.
That makes sense.
Yeah. Lying to police is
that makes sense.
Basically, usually a good idea.
And that's what I was arrested for. The one time I was arrested,
That's the only time you've been arrested is for lying to police.
Yeah.
That's some gentleman shit right there. That's
you know what? I actually fought that in court, and they threw that charge out. The charge was false impersonation. I go, you either impersonate somebody or you don't impersonate them. You can't falsely impersonate them. And the judge goes, hey, you're right. Threw it out, but he still got me for false information to a police officer.
This is just because the cop wrote down false impersonation, just that they didn't know the right term?
I don't know.
Because of that?
Yeah. Well, no, that was the actual law. That was a law, false impersonation, but it was poorly written. So judge threw it out, but he still stuck me with the false information to a police officer report. Apparently, and who knew that you can't tell cops that your name is Abraham Lincoln?
Well, yeah, it's like, well, I mean, it almost sounds like a crime committed by a comedian, just like a bad impression or something.
Well,
You know,
I
it's
knew
like,
I knew I was in trouble when he took out his pen
mhm.
and wrote Abraham Lincoln on the pad and went back to his cruiser and says, "Well, let's see." And I was like, "God damn it." Okay, because he knew my name wasn't Abraham Lincoln, but I said my name was Abraham Lincoln, and now he has to check through the system. And what was more shocking to me is that there was nobody in the state of California named Abraham Lincoln. I
Yeah,
thought maybe
people.
at least I'd get a hit. I could go, yeah, 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 that's me. But nah, nah.
Yeah, it's not like Adolf Hitler. You'd think someone would wanna would have
Actually,
a
I,
little Abraham.
actually, I know a guy with the name Adolf, and he's got a son that he named Adolf Jr.
He's just trying to pass the disease on.
He spells it with a PH though, so he's like, oh, so it's totally different.
Yeah, like he's named after like Adolf Sachs or something. Adolf Reed Jr. That's actually
Yeah,
good.
yeah. Well,
That's
I mean, boy, it's a family. Nah, okay, whatever. So
yeah. Well, cool. I guess before you go, the only actual question here is from my boy Aniket, who wants to know, Eugene, was there an Oxbow record released this year already, or is that later? It's not out
no,
next
no,
year, right?
that's a Brotsman one, and
Yeah.
I spent the last week listening to mixes from Love's Holiday, which is a 10-song release on Epicac that will hit in May of 2023, and it is as different from everything that's come before it as Thin Black Duke was from the Narcotics Story. And I just keep quoting Aaron Turner from Sumac on this. He was like, not what I expected, but everything I hoped for. So
That's beautiful. That's what you
yeah.
want. That's what you want to do. You know?
Well, I mean, I've tried to. We've already tried to. Yeah, I did a Substack on it, and I tried to make the point that records 1 through 8 were really, in my mind, one record, and that you would have to listen to them like the Ring Cycle to really make sense of what Oxbow is. So this, in my mind, is really our second record. Because the emotional states that created the first record, that whole series, are completely not foreign to me now. But those are like, what is that great song by not Johnny Ray, Gene Vincent? That girl belongs to yesterday. That record belongs to yesterday. You know.
Yeah,
Love's Holiday, the new one, is completely different. So
yeah. Right on, man. Well, dude, happy birthday again.
Thank you.
And thank you so much for coming by. It was a rare pleasure. And yeah, man, I'll probably be bugging you now that you've done this. Now I've wormed my way into your life, so I'm gonna be
easy. And you got my phone number, so anytime. Like right. Much like Henny Youngman, I make myself available. or like my porn star friend Mr. Marcus says when he Eugene, what? All right, that guy gets around.
Yeah, well, I was saying to my friend, I was like, the baller shit when someone emails you, who know, it's either you reply immediately or you reply like a month later. That 2 days after is like that's pussy. You got to go extreme, like.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
so anyway. The immediate reply was beautiful to me. All right, cool, man. All right, enjoy dinner. And,
all right,
yeah.
And send me a link or something, because I've not been watching it while it's been happening.
I'll send you a link to this. Yeah, there's a bunch of other great interviews on here that you might be interested. I had Jamie on, and yeah.
Did you say you had Michael Gira, or was it I imagine that?
No, I was just talking about him as an example.
Okay, right.
80s New York. I could try to maybe. Yeah, I've met him a couple times. Very nice.
First conversation I ever had with him, he hung up the phone on me, and then he called me back and threatened to kick my ass, which just made me laugh and laugh.
Yeah, that's all right, man.
Yeah. All right.
Be well,
later.
Eugene.
All right. Thanks, man.
Thank you. There you have it. I always say, there you have it is always the next line after these. I don't even know why I do the post interview ramble, because I edit this out of the podcast, but it's just to say goodbye to everyone. Yeah, thanks to everyone for listening. Dude, how sick is Eugene, right? Yeah, he's great. I mean, I feel like if anyone had questions, they would have asked questions already. So, yeah. If anyone is watching this who is not like, who's not a regular viewer of mine or Last Things, If anyone's interested in joining the Last Things Discord server, we've got a little cult community. It's not a cult. It's cult in the adjective cult, as in cult black metal, where we chop it up about all this kind of shit that we were chopping it up about. So, yeah, I'm easy to find. I'm easy to find just email-wise online. You can try, find me on Instagram or whatever. Yeah, if you want to be on the Last Things Discord server. I don't, sometimes I could announce the next guest. The next guest is actually a spicy guy. I'm not going to officially announce the next guest yet because I want to, I'll believe it when it's a couple days out, then I'll believe it's really going down. But yeah, I think the next guest is going to, you're either going to, come in your pants or you're going to cancel me or both or something. But yeah, Last Things, man, onward and upward. I'm also going to be, I'm going to sort of loosely say this. In general, I'm really going to be pushing the channel now. Like now that Extra Life record's done, I'm going to be like, and I'm going to be starting like a Patreon with like paywalled content. I'm still going to do all this like free content and stuff too, but I'm going to have like extra, educational arms of Last Things that are going to be paid. I'm really going to go media empire mode, para-academic, whatever this is. I'm gonna start getting a little more, even more pro about things. So yeah, look forward to that. And yeah, thanks everyone for coming by. And have a great rest of your weekend. Peace. Have a section about hoteps. Senem says that's like our main thing. Maybe I can get a hotep on here. I don't know who that would be. It's like the closest I know to a hotep. Last Things chord packs coming soon. No chord packs, but I might do sample packs though. That's like actually kind of a sick thing that people do creative shit with, and my electronic composer chops now are like actually at a point where you might actually want a sample pack. You might actually want a Charlie Looker sample pack. So there it is. Much love to everyone and goodbye.